Welcome inside to another edition of 101 Sports, where today we'll be covering March Madness,
the NHL trade deadline,
and MLB free agency.
And it all starts right now. Welcome back inside another edition of One-on-One Sports from the Jane and Brian Williams studio. First, let's get to our quick hitters. And Gray, I have no clue how the Los Angeles Lakers are 11 games under 500, but they keep finding ways to disappoint.
Well, Max, I can give you a pretty easy answer. LeBron James has no help. Russell Westbrook has been awful. Anthony Davis has not been on the floor long enough to actually give LeBron James some help. LeBron James is practically in a wheelchair at this point at 37 years of age. He puts up back-to-back 50-point games and gets absolutely no help. They're bringing Stanley Johnson off the bench. Stanley Johnson. No. Malik Monk is in the starting lineup. Taylor Horton-Tucker, where's he been? LeBron James is decrepit at this point, and he has absolutely no help. God bless his soul is all I got to say.
Goodness gracious. Dude, the Lakers, I remember tweeting about it a while ago. I remember when they got Westbrook initially, I was like, oh my God, they got a good point guard. They're going to be back to being unstoppable. But then everyone else told me, they're getting Russell Westbrook. And I was like, there's no way it could go that bad.
It was the meme from the bubble, because there was a meme, and it was like Russell Westbrook's going to fix their shooting and defense problems. And again, if you remember that shot from the bubble, it was LeBron James backing off Russell Westbrook a good 15 feet to let him shoot. And I'm like, that's going to solve the Lakers' defense and shooting problems, is Russell Westbrook and a bloated contract. So I want to say that I didn't see this coming, but I totally saw this coming. But again, it is LeBron James, and LeBron James, if he does have a healthy Anthony Davis, I think they could, make some noise in the play-in game.
Yeah, if they have a healthy Anthony Davis.
It's LeBron James in the play-in game.
And this is like the third year out of 4 that I can remember that the Lakers have had LeBron, that they've had like insignificant results or at least disappointment, because last year losing 6 to the Suns.
Yep.
Couple of years ago, well, championship, but it's in the bubble, so yada, 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 doesn't count.
Exactly. And then, if you don't count the bubble, what have they done?
And then the 2019 year when everyone was like, oh boy, the Lakers are back, and then LeBron just doesn't play half the year, and then they miss the playoffs.
Remember, LeBron's going to activate playoff mode.
Yep.
And he's
real intimidating.
LeBron James in playoff mode. But also a team that's not going into playoff mode right now, the Cleveland Browns, especially after trading for Deshaun Watson and giving him a boatload of money, leaves our favorite Oklahoma quarterback in the NFL, Baker Mayfield, basically without a starting job. And the Browns are shopping him around. What do you think is that go-to destination for Baker?
Not only do I feel like Progressive is missing out on an On the Road with Baker Mayfield series to promote their RV insurance, but Baker Mayfield, I feel like there's one place in particular that I think he'll fit in, and that's the Carolina Panthers, who were, it's almost poetic. They were rumored for Watson ever since Watson was in trade rumors. And Baker, now that he's out of Cleveland, being pushed out by the acquisition of Deshaun Watson that not many of us even thought was going to happen, because we were being told it was either Atlanta or Carolina.
And then he chooses Cleveland after not saying that he wanted to go to Cleveland. But it's like all these teams that, were in the quarterback rumor mill for the draft, they've all taken quarterbacks now. Because, with the Washington Commanders getting Carson Wentz, which, it's Carson Wentz.
Have fun with that.
Who cares? It's Carson Wentz. He's better than Taylor Heineke. I'm sorry. He just is. And then you have Matt Ryan going to the Colts, and you have Deshaun Watson going to the Browns. It's Baker Mayfield. It's like he's probably just going to end up, either Atlanta or he's going to end up in Seattle, because Seattle's a rebuilding team. Atlanta's a rebuilding team. But you still have those good weapons around on offense that you need someone to get them the ball. And so if you want to develop your players, your skill position players, with a decent quarterback, doesn't have to be great. I definitely think Baker Mayfield can, end up, in Seattle, with Pete Carroll, or end up in Atlanta, because now there's a gaping hole now that Matt Ryan's gone.
I would say Atlanta, but at the same time, they kind of sort of got Marcus Mariota. I don't know if they're going to start with Marcus Mariota, but like
Marcus Mariota though.
I don't know. Like I don't know. They might go with Marcus just because like they know full well they're in a rebuilding phase now. So I don't even know if Baker would
so
want
is Seattle now too, because Seattle, they have a boatload of picks that they got from Denver for Russell Wilson. What was it, 3 first-round picks?
something like that.
Something like that. So you can trade package maybe for Baker Mayfield, get you a quarterback that can maybe run your system. But speaking of new systems, Major League Baseball electing to go to a whole bunch of new rules as part of the new agreement between the players and the owners. Universal DH, are you a fan or not? I personally am not, but what's your take?
I mean, if you want to argue like, the tradition has always been DH in one conference, no DH in the other, then that's totally fine. But with that said, I feel like it's made no sense for there not to be a universal DH for as long as it's been. Like, I feel like DH is still a position of significance in the MLB. So, like, the fact that there is a universal DH now, I feel like that's going to help out a lot more people who maybe don't have as good fielding ability, but like can still hit the ball pretty well. And so I feel like that opens up a little bit more room. Speaking of which, the MLB literally did open up a little bit more room on rosters.
A little bit.
A little bit, but not none.
But also, this is where I do disagree with you, because I think if you add the DH, it kind of takes the strategy out of the game a little bit. Because everyone's like, oh, the pitcher's, guaranteed out. Well, what if that pitcher, goes yard or gets a single or, gets a hit of some kind? Then, it makes the other team's pitchers look bad, obviously. But again, it kind of takes the strategy out of the game. The sacrifice bunts. We might not see as much small ball. We won't see, Titans like Madison Bumgarner or like throwback. I'm going to throw this back to you right here. Carlos Zambrano. Tweet if you know that name. But, it just takes the strategy out of the game for me. Because, in the NL, we've always been used to, the pitcher, getting at-bats and getting hits. And then they go to the AL, they don't get their at-bats. And what happens is they have to go to the NL Park. They would have to hit. Of course, now with the rules that they can't. I just think, it just takes a little piece of the game out, a little more piece of strategy. But still, if the people want home runs and they want hitting, then they can go ahead and have it. But also looking at another rule. We're looking at, doubleheaders now, back to 9 innings, and no ghost runner anymore. Thank God. No ghost runner in extra innings.
I personally always liked having 7-inning doubleheaders. I feel like it was a good way to still get a lot of baseball in.
Go all 9. Just go all 9.
I feel like when I was working with Burlington and they had either Sundays 7-inning games or they had 7-inning doubleheaders, or just generally, I feel like I've had a lot more fun doing that because it's still a decent amount of baseball to get in, but it's not like you're not going to go for maybe like 6-7 hours if things get crazy.
But now also with the ghost runner rule, getting rid of an extra innings, which I think is, thank God for that, because, this isn't wiffle ball. This isn't, Little League World Series in the backyard. You don't put a runner on second base to start extra innings to make the games go quicker. It's just not what you do. It's not the game of baseball, Rob Manfred.
Oh, I don't know if he's ever understood what the game of baseball is, honestly.
Ooh, burn. But, it's...
Sorry, Rob Manfred, if you see this.
No, don't apologize for that, Max. But that's going to do it here for the Quick Hitters. We'll be right back. March Madness block, Bryson Burns versus Colby Cook. I can't wait to see it. With March Madness upon us, round of 64 gone, round of 32 gone, we have our resident North Carolinians, Bryson Burns and Colby Cook, ready to take on the gauntlet of the Sweet 16. But first of all, how you guys doing?
I'm okay. Carolina's still in it. Hubert obviously is doing what Hubert does. I'm a little disappointed in Krzyzewski so far that they're still in it, but I thought, spoiling the fanfare of his much-awaited
final game,
much-awaited pageantry parade that he threw himself and then famously pitched a fit afterward was pretty glorious. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. Bryce, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, great. I'm not really a big fan of any team in college basketball just because my 3 teams are Elon, App State, and Tennessee. Obviously, Elon and App State kind of just fell apart.
And Tennessee was just disappointing.
Tennessee was just at least we got the SEC championship, so that was really big that we got that. But other than that, hopes and dreams shattered.
And then you got beat by a team that shouldn't even be in the tournament.
Yeah.
Rick Barnes going to do what Rick Barnes going to do.
All right, so guys, game to watch for the Sweet 16. Bryson, who do you see?
I'm going to say Iowa State and Miami, because these are two double-digit seeded teams, but they both actually play pretty differently. So Iowa State has a very good defense. They've only allowed around 50 points per game so far in the tournament. Miami is kind of on the other side. They've done pretty good offensively so far, and so you kind of have a good matchup against two teams who kind of everyone thought they were down and out after they lost in their own conference tournament. But after seeing some really good play and some really good upsets over higher-ranked teams, I really think that this is going to be a really good game to watch.
Yeah, Iowa State had a stretch, Bryson, where they went 2-12. 2-12. But I got to go, the barn burner, Duke and Texas Tech. This is a completely different matchup than Duke has seen all year. They're going to neutralize the guards of Duke. Look, Texas Tech and Mark Adams has installed this system that Chris Beard did not have. And Mark Adams is a first-year coach at a big school. It's excellent. What they call it the no-middle offense. Their whole entire goal is to force everybody to take shots on the outside. Duke's going to try to run the ball through Banchero and Mark Williams. They won't be able to do it. They have not seen a defense that is this vociferous and vivacious in the paint all year long. Because let's face it, besides Carolina and Miami, the ACC had a very bad year. And those are the two teams that beat Duke.
That is very true, and obviously, no matter what game Duke plays in, there's always going to be a lot of people watching just because there's always the possibility of it being the last game that Coach K ever coaches. And, a 2 versus 3 matchup is always fun to watch. But to me, March Madness is always about those underdog teams. And one of these teams, either Iowa State or Miami, they're going to be a double-digit seeded team going into the Elite Eight. And so just because of that, in my opinion, that's the game to watch because a double-digit seeded team has never won the national championship. They've never gone all the way. We haven't seen that Cinderella story have that happily ever after before. And so I think there's a good chance that either one of these teams could end up doing that. I ultimately do not think so, but I think this is definitely an under-the-radar game that deserves a lot of attention.
Well, and Jim Larinaga is no stranger with taking, double-digit seeds to the Final Four. But I have to say, as a fan of America, even if that means the Heels get knocked out, if St. Peter's goes to the Final Four.
And speaking of St. Peter's, upsets right now. Just one of 3 15 seeds to ever make the Sweet 16. Last year we had Oral Roberts, and in 2013 we had Florida Gulf Coast. This is definitely a different team, not as offensively fire-powered as those two teams. But you think they can pull the upset over Zach Edey and Travion Williams down low?
Absolutely.
No.
Let me explain myself.
Please.
You always have to go with the underdog because here's the facts. Only 2.5% of people even had St. Peter's getting to this point. And St. Peter's has proven all of those doubters wrong so far, Gray. Mm-hmm. And so I think you have to keep up that momentum. They've won 9 straight games. They won 7 straight coming into the tournament. So they really have that momentum behind them. They've had some really good offensive outputs. They shot 51% from the floor against Kentucky and then 41.5% from the floor against Murray State. They've just done a very good job of shooting the ball. They're not going to have a lot of second chance opportunities on the offensive side of the court, but if they can take those good shots and make them, I don't think that Purdue's size advantage is going to come into play that much.
Yeah, Shaheem Holloway had a really interesting quote. He asked, following the Murray State game, was he nervous? And he answered with one of the most just fantastic answers I've ever heard a coach say. He said, what's there to be nervous about? It's basketball, and walked off. Was incredible. So, yeah, I got to agree. Jaden Ivey going down. I love him. I think he'll be great in the NBA. St. Peter's. Book it.
Who on St. Peter's can guard either of the two centers?
See, Gray, it's not going to matter because what you're going to see is Daryl Banks III. He's going to go off like he did against Kentucky because he had 27 points against Kentucky. He's going to have himself a night once again, and St. Peter's is going to put their name down in the history books. This is the year. Never bet against the man that has already proven you wrong, not once but twice.
Graham, listen to me. And listen very good.
Yes.
Doug Eddert is going to channel the inner machinations of B-dubs and get all of the 26 sauces and seasonings. I'm talking all of them.
All of them.
Because he just secured an NIL deal with B-Dubs, and the mustachioed man is going to slay the giant.
So he's going to grow to 7'4" and guard Zach Edey, who's the most dominant player in college basketball this season statistically.
You don't have to. They're quicker, they're faster. Speed, baby, speed.
Yeah. And they're shooting, and as we said, they're shooting over nearly around 45%.
They played Kentucky,
But Kentucky,
who struggled with Miles College in November.
Kentucky is but Kentucky was a 2 seed. No matter how you cut it, they were one of the top 10 teams.
And how has the
tournament.
SEC done in the tournament?
Well, not too good. That is fair
Exactly.
to say. But SEC has, I know we've had this discussion back during the first semester of this show, but the SEC has continually gotten better in basketball. Yes, this year
They've
wasn't
got
the year.
one team left, and it's Arkansas.
But how many teams that they had get into the tournament? Just because
How many are left?
Just because the dice didn't, just because the cards weren't dealt right for them in those
The
round of
cards
16
weren't dealt right. They lost games.
Well, I'm just saying, I've said it once, I've said it again, never bet against the man that has proven you wrong.
Okay, that was college football. Colby, talk about the Tar Heels.
Well, upset pick, baby. Hubert is going all the way. Like it or not, Hubert's going all the way, and Mick Cronin's going to go home crying again. Jaime Jaquez Jr., questionable. He may play. The ankle's still a little banged up. He's not going to be able to contend with Baycott. Armando will have a feast in the paint. Bucket. Leaky Black is going to lock down Tiger Campbell. It's going to be beautiful. Hubert, as a first-year head coach, will take the Heels to the Elite Eight.
So you think they're going to be as consistent as they were when they almost blew a 25-point lead?
If Brady Manick is not the recipient of one of the worst officiating calls I have seen in the past 25 years, sure. If they bring that same crew on, and the game
I don't
is
think that
played in
crew's
Fort
getting a
Worth,
game.
Texas, and the game is played in Fort Worth, Texas, I would say no. However, 10 consecutive fouls. You can't tell me there's not something there.
I don't know, but Chip and Joanna Gaines' team, the Baylor Bears, did fall to Carolina. They're in the Sweet 16. But, guys, we're just one step closer to the national championship game, the Final Four. Who do you guys have winning it? Last question.
You know, I picked kind of the big answer for the upset. I picked St. Peter's, but Gonzaga is just too good. They have a fantastic offense that's first in the nation when it comes to points per game. They've beaten multiple ranked teams so far this year. And Tommy, man, scores nearly 60 points in the first 2 games of the tournament. Gonzaga is on a roll. I know they have never quite finished it out before when it comes to the tournament, but I think this is the year because they really proved themselves against Memphis. Yes, Memphis was ranked a lot lower and they weren't as good, but to be able to make that comeback coming out of the locker room and to come back that early as well, I think that just says a lot about that program.
Are you just going to give us, a bunch of UNC propaganda for your champion?
Propaganda? Propaganda?
It's propaganda.
Well, I just want to ask you as a Wake Forest fan,
Who beat Carolina?
where is Alondis Williams right now?
Alondis Williams, he is sitting at home right now after falling to Texas A&M.
And where is Armando Baycott right now?
He's in the NCAA tournament with not having an ACC Player of the Year.
So where would you rather be at the end of the year? On your couch or in Philadelphia?
Probably is the only ACC team to probably have 25 wins and not make the tournament in a complete and utter sham. But
Go cry about it.
anyway, 98-76. That's all I gotta say. And what did Hubert Davis give credit to? He said, "When we got our butt kicked by Wake Forest, that woke up our season." So you're welcome. You're welcome for this.
Whatever helps you sleep at night, buddy. Anyway, Carolina does have a good shot at a national championship, yes. But Mark Adams has this team on an absolute roll. Kevin O'Banner, former guard from Oral Roberts, believe it or not, is on that team. Absolutely blazing a trail. Mark Adams was a very low-level head coach, but this is his first Division I head coaching job, and it's brilliant. He's completely retooled Texas Tech in a year. It's like Chris Beard was almost never there.
I mean, Chris Beard, he's a great coach in his own right, doing good things at Texas. So you think Texas Tech, get back to where they were against Virginia in 2019 and bring it home?
Absolutely. I think Houston as well is another dark horse in this. Kelvin Sampson has got his guys dialed defensively and offensively, and they also have, some good guards in Fabian White Jr. and Marcus Sasser. I think either of those two are kind of my dark horse picks to win the Natty. I think Gonzaga this year, they've shown it was a little shaky. Arizona's still in it. Tommy Lloyd was a favorite at the beginning of the year. They almost lost to Jamie Dixon's Horned Frogs. So you're looking at Texas Tech or Houston to make a Cinderella run to the national championship. It could get ugly.
But we have so much more of March Madness to come. We'll be back right here on 101 Sports. We're hitting the ice hockey rink with Max Kreider. With the NHL trade deadline coming and going earlier this week, we bring in our resident hockey analyst, Max Kreider. Max, how you doing?
Awesome. Always a great time of year, the trade deadline. I feel like it wasn't really as hyped up as a lot of the other deadlines were. There weren't really as many top pieces floating around, but still always a good time of the year.
And again, resident Tampa Bay Lightning fan, so you're not exactly as suffering as I am in terms of having infertility, in terms of being a winner in sports. So your Tampa Bay Lightning not doing too bad, are they?
No, they're not. They're currently sitting at second in the Atlantic right now. They're behind the Florida Panthers, who I'll talk about in a little bit. Your Canes are doing pretty well, though.
Yes, they are.
Honestly,
yes,
I feel like as good, if not a better team than Tampa right now.
Okay, but breaking down winners, losers, again, the trade deadline came and went. Who are some of your winners that you saw?
I feel like a team that won big was the New York Rangers, and the reason they won is because they didn't have to get that star player. So they didn't go get that star player at the deadline. They got great additions in Andrew Kopp. He's always been appreciated as a two-way forward, really good for special teams. Justin Braun, he's always been a good stay-at-home defenseman. He joins the Rangers to solidify that third pair with Patrick Nemeth. And then also they got Tyler Mott. I know he's generally considered a pretty good defensive forward. So nothing super-duper flashy, but it's all guys who get it done come playoff time.
And also looking at another winner that you had, the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, they're looking towards, going back to the Stanley Cup. What are you seeing from the Avalanche at the trade deadline?
They had a similar-ish deadline to the New York Rangers. They didn't add anybody super amazing, but all guys that can really get it done. Arturi Lehkonen is one of my most favorite, underappreciated gets at the deadline. He's really good defensively, and he should fit in just right with that middle six of Colorado. Josh Manson, also going to the Avalanche's defensive help. That's always nice. And then an interesting trade they made was they traded former first-round pick Tyson Jost to the Minnesota Wild for Nico Sturm 1-for-1. So Tyson Jost, I feel like he could be interesting on Minnesota. Minnesota's my third winner of the deadline, by the way. They did trade away Nico Sturm. He's a really good defensive fourth-line forward. But they did at least try to address their needs, which were a pretty good penalty kill, or they need to get a good penalty kill, and goaltending. That's an issue that's haunted them for so long, so they decided they were going to go out and get Marc-Andre Fleury as a playoff rental. And really, there aren't that many goaltenders who have been doing worse than Cam Talbot this season, so Fleury already is an upgrade. And then another down-the-ballot get for the Wild, Nick Delorier. He's a good penalty killer, and so Minnesota will see if they can fix their issues, because if they do, I can see them as a team maybe going to the conference final, or if they can get a miracle run together, the Stanley Cup.
But now, looking at teams that are a little less fortunate, the losers of the trade deadline, and your number one loser was, the Arizona Coyotes, who can't even really find a permanent home in Arizona. I mean, just nothing seems to be going right for the Coyotes.
Man, I would not be excited to be playing in a 5,000-seat arena for next season, but Arizona had such a great opportunity at this deadline to at least get some first-round picks back with guys like Jacob Chychrun, who has grown into one of the best left-handed defensemen in the league, and Phil Kessel, who isn't quite his 2016 self, but is still viable as an offensive winger. Both of them stayed in Arizona past the trade deadline. So, especially with Kessel becoming an unrestricted free agent this offseason, that really stings for Arizona. I'm going to be harping on the Central a little bit more here. Chicago also, I felt, lost because of their inability to sell high, or at least sell some guys that I felt should have been traded away. Dylan Strome was a big name I thought would get flipped at the deadline. He's come into his own since getting traded to the Blackhawks a couple years back. Dominic Kubalik, he's pretty good. I feel like he'd be good for a team that needs him for 2-ish years as a third line, maybe second line winger if he gets his game back. for a couple years before he hits free agency. And then just a couple other guys in there that just felt like they should have been traded but weren't. So I feel like Chicago had a lot of missed opportunities. And then the Nashville Predators. I feel like they were in position to strike this deadline. They could have gotten some big pieces in. I feel like they could have gotten Max Domi over Carolina. He would have been great for their top 6, as well as maybe a couple other additions on their blue line. But all they did was trade a second-round pick for Jeremy Lauzon, who I've personally never been the biggest fan of. He got picked by Seattle in the expansion draft, but it's good for Seattle to get a second-round pick out of him. But I don't really know if he's going to be the guy that puts Nashville over the top.
And looking at, your conference final predictions as well, because we're getting to the time, playoffs are almost here. Who could you see coming out of the Eastern and Western Conference and maybe meet in the Stanley Cup final?
I'm going to have a pretty boring prediction for the Eastern Conference. Sorry, Tampa fans, I'm not feeling like a homer right now, but I have Carolina and Florida meeting in the Eastern Conference final. Florida, if they win a series, that would be the first series they've won since the 1990s when they went on that miracle Stanley Cup final run. And that would make them one of 3 teams. They're right now one of 3 teams that has not won a playoff series since the salary cap was introduced. So,
and you know who did win a playoff series last year? The Carolina Hurricanes. And you have them going.
Both of us did.
And you had the Stanley Cup final.
Yep.
The Hurricanes going to raise the cup, obviously.
I think they are. I think they're going to meet Colorado in the final. I have them beating them in 5 right now. Although the Western Conference final, I feel like even though I just made fun of Nashville a lot, I feel like they can make a deep run if UC Saros continues to be UC Saros. He's been one of the best goaltenders in the league from both a base and analytical perspective. So I feel like Carolina and Florida and Colorado all have fairly easy paths to the cup, but you never know. It's the NHL.
All right, one more thing again, just to appease me. Just talk a little about, Sebastian Aho, about how amazing he is, Kotkaniemi, Timo Teravainen, just talk about the Hurricanes for me.
They have a very, very good homegrown, for the most part, team.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to talk about Max Domi for a little bit because he is a good get. I feel like I would be a lot more excited about Max Domi getting traded if it was 2 years ago, but, better late than never. I do feel like he'll be able to fit in on the middle 6. Maybe they'll put him on the top line with Aho and whoever they put. Rod Brindamore is never really afraid to shuffle things up, and given how they're doing, it works, so why not?
And there's nothing like hearing your teams are going to the Stanley Cup final from your 1-0 Max Kreider. Max, it's been a pleasure, sir. We're going to be right back. March Madness is upon us. We got Bryson Burns and Colby Cook coming up next. After a long and lengthy lockout, the MLB free agency has resumed, and we've brought on our resident mountain man, Colby Cook. And Colby, I'm sorry to bring this up, but you're a fan of the Atlanta Braves, and Freddie Freeman has left the building.
Well, Freddie, it was a tough situation. I love you. I'll miss you dearly. 6 years, $162 million to the Dodgers. But let me tell you this, Alex Anthopoulos, not messing around. Word has it, he was given 2 offers by Freddie's agent and given an hour to pick one. He declined to both. Next day, locked down Matt Olson. And a day later, 8 years.
But, doesn't that say something, though? Because, Freddie Freeman's been the face of the franchise for, since he was pretty much drafted, back in 2007. He replaced Chipper Jones, and now people are screaming there's no loyalty in baseball.
Yes, and here's the thing. I really do feel for Freddie. I think he was holding out for that big mega deal because the 6/162 offer he received with taxes adjusted in California is actually less than what he was offered at around 5/150, I believe, by Alex Anthopoulos to stay in Georgia because, as you know, games are taxed where they are played. So with the majority of the games being played in the state of California, that's your tax rate. But we wish Freddie well, and we like the Braves to get Matt Olson in his prime at 27, who, yes, has a little lower bit of a batting average than Freddie does, but a great high ceiling, and we're just getting him in his prime.
I was going to say, so what are your thoughts on, the Matt Olson trade? Because, your face of your franchise is gone, and now you bring in Matt Olson, who's, sometimes or could be compared to Freddie Freeman, both sweet swinging lefties. He could have a good amount of, success in Truist Park.
And while Matt Olson doesn't have the batting average that Freddie has, he does have better contact against left-handed pitching. Also, the right field seats in Truist Park are going to play a lot better than those of the Oakland Coliseum, or Ring Central as it's now called, for Matt Olson. So the Braves got a good one, locked him down to an 8-year deal, and I really do think it says something. He's an Atlanta kid. He went to Parkview High School, same high school of Jeff Francoeur, and I think it really says something that he locked down an 8-year deal the day after he was traded. He wants to be there, and he wants to be an Atlanta Brave.
And not exactly an 8-year deal, but now let's look at a 7-year deal with Chris Bryant going to the Colorado Rockies for $182 million, and then they give up Trevor Story to the Red Sox. I mean, what are the Rockies doing?
The Rockies are getting a talent that is going to hit a ton of home runs in Colorado with the high altitude. He's also a guy that he's already won his World Series ring, so will he likely get one in Colorado? Absolutely not. But does he have a chance to put up an MVP campaign with the skewed numbers at Coors Field? Absolutely. So that's why Chris Bryant signed with the Rockies.
And looking at another big deal, Carlos Correa leaving the trash can banging Houston Astros, going to the Minnesota Twins. And again, a Minnesota team that has never been able to get over the hump, since we've basically been alive. But, I mean, they're getting the star shortstop in Minnesota.
Yeah, and they also, remember, got Gary Sanchez from the Yankees. And so they're building something there. But the thing that's interesting about this deal for Correa is it's 3 years, $105.3 million, opt-outs after every year. So more than likely, Gray, he's going to test the free agent market next year. He got that high AAV deal, average annual value. He's going to test the market next year. He's not staying all 3 years.
So even if, the Twins try and make a run, or, they're bringing some more talent around him, you still think he's going to opt out?
Absolutely.
Well, why would he opt out if they're winning and he's making a ton of money?
This year is a very, very crowded free agent market. And so the free agent market for Carlos Correa was very crowded, as you saw. Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman, Trevor Story. We'll talk about Soler. We've talked about Bryant. Schwarber and Castellanos signed with the Phillies. It's crowded. He's waiting it out. He's securing the bag this year. He's leaving Minnesota next year.
And as already we talked about the universal DH and, the quick hitters. What do you think that brings in, teams into signing free agents?
So now, it's more of an even playing field. As we saw, longtime designated hitter Nelson Cruz signed with the Nationals. He was actually the first full-time DH off the board. This really opens up the field because now, with the pitcher not batting, it's a free-for-all. So you're going to see a lot of these power-hitting outfielders that traditionally would play corner spots in the National League be designated hitters. You're also going to see guys like Nelson Cruz go to National League teams.
And I know I'm going to pick your brain a little bit about an underrated deal that you can kind of think of. I know you're going to say Rougned Odor to the Orioles because the Orioles just made an absolute splash in free agency. But, what's an underrated deal you think that, people are kind of overlooking?
So I think, honestly, former Brave Jorge Soler to the Marlins, 3 years, $36 million, same structure, $12 million a year, opt-outs after every year. So, it's well documented that Derek Jeter, before he stepped down from the Marlins, wanted Nick Castellanos. He didn't get him. He went to the Phillies. So he goes out and gets Soler. This is a solid pickup. We're talking about an MVP of a playoff series. He's going to be really good for the team in South Beach.
See, I'm a big fan of Josh Donaldson going to the New York Yankees because, again, New York just has had problems staying healthy forever, it seems like, under Aaron Boone. And, again, they just have never had really that staple in a quarter infield position, either at first or third, or in the DH spot. And if you're going to bring some guy to hit down the left field line, might as well be the former MVP Josh Donaldson.
Might as well be Josh, and you're right, he's an absolute stud of a power hitter, but he does also have that injury history, so that's something I'm worried about with Josh Donaldson. We even saw it the last couple of years when he was in Minnesota. So that, I think, definitely factors into their plans, as well as the fact that they brought back Anthony Rizzo and were not able to secure Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson, both targets they looked at.
Well, Colby Cook, a man of the hardwood and the diamond, sir. Always a pleasure. We're going to be right back here on 101 Sports. Thank you for watching another edition of 101 Sports.
For additional one-on-one sports content, follow us on either Instagram or Twitter at one-on-one sports, or subscribe to the One-on-One Sports YouTube channel. Stay tuned for the draft special that's going to be in about a month. We're going to put a lot of effort into that. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be a really good time.
4-hour live stream special. It's going to be all right here on the 101 Sports YouTube channel. For Gray Aust, Max Kreider, the old question, whose side are you on? That's what we'll put. Oh, the arm, the cannon.